Hello and welcome to Around the World in 80 Teas. My name is Sharon Hall and I'm the Chief Executive of the UK Tea and Infusions Association. And together with my co-host, Will Battle, author of the World Tea Encyclopedia, we'll be talking with mountaineer and explorer Andrew Hughes about the important role tea plays in expeditions and his world record-breaking tea party. Andrew Hughes has completed the 7 summits, the highest mountains on each continent, and 6 of the 7 volcanic summits. He is set to complete the rarely realized Explorers Grand Slam in April 2023, an adventurous challenge to reach the North Pole, the South Pole, and all 7 summits. Andrew also holds a Guinness World Record set on Mount Everest in spring 2021. Andrew, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us. Let's start with that Guinness World Record, world's highest tea party. Tell us more.
Yeah, it's first of all, thank you for having me this morning, or I guess evening for you. Yeah, it was something that was born from kind of when the world came to a stop with COVID. I was supposed to be returning to Everest in 2020. And had the bags packed by the door and was ready to go. And then the world came to a stop. And I think for a lot of us, we had a substantial amount of time to reassess the things that were in our lives and the meaning they had to us. And if those things return to us one day, what will we do to better maybe have gratitude for them? And one of those was this absence of my ability to explore, because before then it had been about 6 to 7 months a year of traveling, climbing, exploring, and all of a sudden I was home with my lovely fiance and dog, which was a gift, but it definitely created a gap as well. And I filled that with thoughts of, okay, so going back, how do I create more meaning for the mountains, more meaning for these places I go to? And one of those was thinking about maybe a record we could set on Everest, bringing together climbers from around the world who will be returning to that mountain, but also the local and incredible Nepalese climbers and support staff, and a tea party. Just seemed like a great thing. My family, my father was born in Devon, and I grew up kind of in a small English bed and breakfast, kind of outside Seattle. It was English inspired, and I used to make high teas for our guests, even when I couldn't necessarily over the table. So just this seemed something that was in light of celebration, and something that I want to do. And luckily, I guess World Records approved me to try it. And so that started this whole process of planning and logistically figuring it out. There's a lot of different things besides just the tea party to ensure that it's actually a bona fide tea party. But it was quite the journey to get all these supplies from the United States and sourced over, bring them all the way across around the world, all the way up via Yak, the Khumbu Valley, through Everest Base Camp, and then on multiple rotations, carry all these supplies up to Camp 2, where we ended up hosting what's now been recognized as the highest tea party ever on Earth.
It's absolutely incredible. And you talk about logistics there. I mean, what did you have to have at that tea party to make it a valid world record?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing was learning that world records are not as simple as doing the act. Doing the act is easy. The ensuring that you meet all the requirements. There's everything from ensuring that the food staples that you bring up there are properly handled. So I got a food handler's permit, and now I guess to work in the restaurant industry if I wanted to in Seattle. Things like that. You have to have individuals that are professional and that can take measurements to ensure that you're at the proper altitude. It has to have all the accoutrements of a tea party. So you can't just show up with a cup of tea and say, I'm having a party for one. It has to be, everyone has to have, there has to be a table, everyone has to have a chair, everyone has to have a teacup or a cup of some sort of tea in it. Everyone has to have some form of food thing and be seated at the table. You have to essentially bring all the items in. You had to have a plan for dispersing of those foods so there's no waste afterwards, ensuring that there's a food plan. So if you had extra things, which there was none, because eating cookies at 21,000 feet, there's not a crumb left on that table. I think people were digging through the snow to find anything left. It was one of those things where there was a lot of things to ensure that were in place before we did it. But once we had it kind of in place, then it was just making sure that we could get everything to where it was. The other thing was ensuring we had the proper altitude, because I originally had planned for this entire party to take place at Everest Base Camp. However, our camp location was just under by about 100 feet or so, maybe like about 30 meters below where we needed to be. And I searched for an hour trying to find anywhere in base camp we could hold it, and we realized it wasn't going to work. So we held two tea parties. The first was to celebrate with all our base camp staff who were from Nepal, and then give them all these incredible supplies that Mir, a local company, donated. They donated $3,000 or $4,000 worth of like cups and thermoses and other sustainable goods that we could then donate to those that are in the Khumbu Valley that live and work and have a really hard access time to getting these kind of supplies. So that was wonderful. And then we kind of hauled up the remaining party supplies to over 21,000 feet, and that held put together a second tea party that could break the record.
I have to ask, did you carry all of that, including the cake stand, across those ladders? I mean,
yeah, so we kind of dispersed it between a few people, but since we did 3 different trips, I mean, the chairs and all that were carried up like amazingly by our incredible Sherpas that they and people, our high altitude porters, because they set up the camp. And so luckily the chairs were brought there, and then we carried them from where they were located to our tea party, along with the table as well. We broke down our mess tables and like carried them out in that snowstorm. But all the other like food and even the nice part about that tea stand is I found one that could collapse down. And so I basically just slid it in my bag and had it kind of tucked against my back. But yeah, all those things we then ended up donating. They could stay in the Khumbu so they could serve, because tea is such a, like we're not sure we're going to talk about, a important part of the day-to-day culture in Nepal and at base camp. So I left it there at base camp so they could use it for future seasons, including the one probably coming up right now.
Amazing.
So, Andrew, did you have to carry the water up, or were you melting snow up there on?
Melted all the snow. Yeah, thank goodness, because water weight is just so bad. Yeah, but we melted all the snow there, created the hot water up there, and then poured it out. But yeah, all the water is sourced from kind of there's some ice usually up along the side closer to Everest at Camp 2 where we kind of source it from. It's generally a cleaner uphill area from where a lot of the other kind of camp waste can go. But yeah, tea is helpful because it covers up a lot of the other tastes that come from melting mountain snow. So it's quite nice even on a non-tea party day.
And how long does it take to boil enough tea for your tea party?
Yeah, so and that's an interesting thing. Like, and I actually had to dive into the science a little bit onto this because I'm not very astute as to that. But the boiling point, because based upon atmospheric pressures, from my understanding, is that the water actually boils faster, but it just boils at a lower temperature. And so what that means when it comes to tea, it's fine. I don't know how it impacts the steeping process. But for food, that means you have to cook it longer. There's this kind of idea that the water's boiling, so it means the temperature is proper. But it actually, because the boiling point temperature is lower at higher altitude, that means you have to cook your food longer in order to ensure that it's fully cooked where it needs to be so you don't get sick. So it's like there's one of these weird things. And so like when it comes to steeping, generally the water's definitely hot enough to kind of steep your tea. And we're not too picky, to be honest, as long as it's wet and it doesn't taste like water anymore, because our taste buds change as we get higher. There's very few people, and they're very lucky, that actually keep a full amount of appetite. One of the things that happens is that you kind of lose your desire to drink water, you lose your desire to kind of eat food when you get higher. So you want those things that you craved as a kid, some things like are sweets or just things that just like have like a different taste varieties, which goes to like having like a variety of teas just to kind of stimulate your palate in a way that is kind of comforting versus kind of I don't know, things back home where you're not eating veggies up there. Let's just say that. So yeah.
How important is tea in the culture at base camp on Everest?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something throughout the entire trek in. It's one of the things. I mean, the lodges are essentially tea houses as well for most trekkers. You stop in along the way. You order usually either a ginger or like kind of a lemon tea. Some of it's very sugar based. But the more traditional that, and my favorite is the Nepali kind of milk tea, which is kind of like a chai, but it's also, there's not one way to do it, which was what I love. It's every family and every person who makes it in their own different ways, bringing in everything from anise to cardamom to pepper. It changes in the spiciness of it, and that's the beauty of it. And I think it really is like every different tea house along the way, but throughout the day, especially at base camp, we spend so much time not climbing, and I hate to burst the bubble of most people that try to sell themselves as I'm climbing Everest and going so hard. Everest is a lot about waiting. It's a lot about spending time together and sitting and waiting for your opportunities and acclimating. You climb and then you wait to let your body adjust, and then you climb back down and then you do it again. And so there's so much time where you're just spent around a table with people you just met in the last handful of weeks. And this is where like that mountain family, those mountain bonds are built. It's just literally sitting with a warm cup of like milk tea or ginger tea, or any other kind of, we have so many different kinds of tea bags and on the table around us usually, but anything that kind of allows us to kind of like hydrate ourselves, warm ourselves, and just feel comfort in that waiting and kind of build those bonds together. So I think it's something that it's done throughout the day. I mean, we start the day in morning with tea and we end it with tea, and it's just kind of perpetually. There's thermoses always in our base camp tents. There's thermoses always kind of up at that. We're putting it in our water bottles usually in the morning when we do our alpine starts, usually to kind of like hydrate ourselves and keep going. We'll have one of our bottles will be with tea bags in it as well, so we can sip on that as we're going up. So yeah, it's part of the whole climb, and it's light usually, which is oh so nice because weight matters and ounces matter. So it's easier, like coffee grinds. You can't, no one does that up top, like, but you can take tea with you, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really excellent. And I love the idea of tea bringing people together. And you talked about your tea party was a sort of international gathering.
Yeah, it's
sort of a common language, isn't it? Sitting and having a cup of tea.
It is. It's something that I think tea itself is international. I mean, it's individual, but it's also a place of connection. And there's tea ceremonies in so many different kind of cultures. And then because of that, I think it's, for me, food in general and drink has always been really important part of travel and exploration. And it's been one of my favorite entry points. Just because I think there is so much individual kind of identity linked to what we consume and what we prepare and how we prepare it. And tea is very much like that. And so you kind of like gain different identities at different tea houses as you move along the way up the Khumbu Valley. And you trek, you learn where your favorite Nepali milk tea is, where your favorite little like tea houses are. And then you also just like, there's good days and bad days. Like who's ever making the tea, like you don't know where it's necessarily coming from the messed up. You're like, today is a good day of milk tea. And you just become a very fine connoisseur of this is a good one, like which thermos has the good tea, and kind of move that towards you on the table, and you just kind of keep it down there. So, and it's also just, I mean, last year was a very unique year with COVID because a lot of teams, we isolated from one another in order to kind of ensure as best we could. I mean, COVID did come through. We were lucky, our team was lucky enough to avoid it. But this year, I think, will be a very different year, and a year more like in 2019 when I was last on Everest, where you invite other team members over and other guides and other people into your tent. And that's kind of where this mountain family and community builds those bonds, is having these moments and having these times together, just sharing stories and kind of talking about what calls us to these places that are fairly inhospitable to humans, but we still have this call of humanity that kind of brings us there.
This might seem like a silly question, but is the milk in Nepali milk tea yak's milk?
I think it's probably dehydrated milk. I'm almost positive it's dehydrated. Again, liquids don't really come up very far, and they're hard to store. Most of the things we get are dehydrated versions of themselves. In my mind, I tell myself it's freshly milked yaks from the yaks that are coming up there. In truth, it's probably just a powdered substance that's brought up because it's it's easier to pack. Again, it's kind of like the items we used for the tea party itself. Wasn't just about picking items that I wanted. It was also what has the durability to actually survive the whole journey there. And some of those items that I picked still didn't do that, but the crumbs were still consumed. But it was one of those things where I think like our egg products and our milk products, most of those things are always dehydrated, just for longevity, storage, all those things.
A big part of going up to Everest, and I'm sure you experienced as well, is going into one of the monasteries and getting a blessing from the monks. And a lasting memory for me is the monks were all sort of sat drinking tea and actually dunking in their digestive biscuits, which home from home for us.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, the traditions go on and on like that. I mean, like we were fortunate to kind of have multiple blessings along the way. And then we do a huge puja ceremony, which is, we don't start climbing the mountain. No one goes on the mountain until we've asked the mountain permission to climb it. And that involves a ceremony where we bring all our climbing gear, the Sherpa and the local porters that will be climbing, altitude porters will be climbing the mountain. We all come together and we sit around and we bring in a local lama to kind of bless us and ask permission. And that ceremony is a mix of both tea and beer and some liquor, but it's a kind of a huge just kind of offering, and we basically put teas and different things to the mountain and leave them at our puja during puja ceremony. A part of the reverence of this place is the incorporation of these ceremonies, and they oftentimes involve tea as well, and other drinks. So
you've talked about sort of black and green tea being helpful if you're suffering from altitude sickness.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So caffeine itself really helps a lot of people with kind of AMS, so altitude mountains headaches, and in general. So we try to get some kind of caffeine usually. I mean, that's why also Excedrin works so well. The drugs we use that has chemical within kind of the painkillers. It just helps to combat those altitude headaches, which are one of the more common forms of altitude sickness as you move up the mountain. So being able to kind of sip on kind of a green or a black tea, which has caffeine in it, and then more maybe natural caffeine as well, maybe a little easier on the stomach, also is just really helpful in that capacity. That's also why we move on to like using peppermint and ginger teas, because they also can help soothe the stomach, because you're actually, the longer you're at altitude, your actual entire biome changes inside the chemicals, and so you just are trying to find ways to calm and find peace within, and not just spirit within, but body within. So tea is an excellent way of doing that as well.
Yeah, we've actually sponsored some research that looked at the impact of tea on the gut biome.
Yeah,
and it's really, really positive. So yeah, I can
absolutely
understand that.
No, and it's something that I fully believe in. I kind of was trying to pick teas that had a lot of those different kind of properties to them, especially since we were drinking the record was set just over 21,000 feet, which is, I think it's like 6,000 plus meters. So it was up there, and at that point in time, you just, everything is a labor, and everything is kind of your body is already kind of very unhappy with you and kind of fighting the environment, and so you're just trying to find ways to calm it a little bit and relax it.
I've been absolutely fascinated. For me, it's been a real treat to hear someone who's actually visited all those places I've only ever read about, but to have done it off the back of tea is that's even more of a treat, I think, to me, to have really sort of heard what a part it plays. And do you know where the tea that you used in the tea party came from? Is it Nepali tea?
So we at base camp we used Nepali tea. We also just sourced a number of other teas. Just kind of like, we had some Twinnings, we had some Republic of Tea. We had, again, I was looking for things that I could like pack and carry pretty well. We definitely, I mean, I love loose leaf tea, and we use that more kind of at base camp. There is that incorporation, it's available there. As you go up the mountain, you're just looking for, again, packability. And so you're going to like a more traditional tea bag, which definitely kind of mixes. We had a lot of rubios and stuff like that. A couple of oolongs. I mean, we definitely take chamomiles and other stuff the mountain, just because you're looking again for anything to kind of help you with those different issues. But yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly where everything was sourced from, but along the way in there, a lot of that stuff is Nepali based.
That is an excellent selection of teas you took with you.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
I mean, I grew up like with like an Earl Grey red rose mix, which I'm not quite sure what that is, but that's what my grandpa and my grandma had when I would go to visit them in Australia, and that's what we served at our bed and breakfast. And so for me, there's something extremely comforting about that combination. I don't even know if that's a bastardization of the teas themselves, but it's kind of one of those things that's my comfort thing. So I always bring a few of those to put in with a little bit of our dehydrated milk, and it just kind of brings me back to like my childhood. But I drink a lot more of green teas in general, just kind of balance and give me. I just feel that they're a good fit for higher up on the mountain. So that and chamomile, because sleeping is very hard. So anything to help relax you, like as you kind of get through the day, you're always looking for things to kind of like calm you down a little bit. So.
And are you excited about your Grand Slam challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to be there right now this year, but with the war in Ukraine, things just have shifted a lot, and it's another one of those moments where you just gain perspective on what actually matters and what doesn't matter. In my expedition, which I was very much looking forward to, it would have been an incredible completion of a dream. Just as a small delay, but it's nothing compared to kind of the catastrophic things that are happening in Ukraine. And it just kind of highlights too how the world is connected no matter where you go in the world. I mean, I was heading towards the Arctic, and you realize that you can go as far as you want to, but you're still connected to like the things that are happening in our world. There's no escaping those. You can't get away from them. So yeah, it's I'm excited for when the world kind of gets to a more peaceful place, hopefully, and I can return to the Arctic and complete that Grand Slam. But I know it'll be there. There'll be probably less ice, but I will get there. And then in the meantime, I get to head off to Mexico to go climbing next month. I'm going to try the 8th highest mountain in North America, and then some ice climbing and ski descents on some volcanoes this summer. So basically all I'm allowed to do. I'm getting married this year as well, and I'm pretty sure my fiance is making me stay involved in the wedding planning, despite my earnest attempts to escape off to climb some more mountains in the meantime. So yeah, potentially post wedding, I'll have some bigger adventures. So.
Oh, well, congratulations on getting married. That's really exciting. And
yeah, I feel very lucky. She's incredible. She stuck through me through all these different expeditions. I actually proposed to her on the summit of Everest. So she wasn't there. She didn't know it, but I had a flag and I had my friend record it. And then I came back and asked her a month and a half later and showed her everything from the summit of Everest. But yeah, I wanted her to know that she was also tied to that special place. So.
Is the wedding happening somewhere conventional, or
she doesn't actually like the cold, so it definitely would not be happening. She likes water in its more liquid state of being, so beaches and lakes, where I go ice and snow. So yeah, we're in Santa Barbara, California, warm, sunny, water, some hills behind, a marriage of nature and ourselves. So it'd be lovely. So yeah,
it will be so lovely. Andrew, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today, and we hope that you'll come and have another cuppa with us after you've finished the Grand Slam. Good luck with the wedding. And
yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I read in the article about you, you'd be happy to be an ambassador for tea. And I think you're already doing that. We really appreciate it as an industry, everything positive that you're saying about our beverage that we are so proud of.
Absolutely, as you should be. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew, and good luck.
Thank you. Take care.